Well, within 48 hours, Charles, she went into a furniture store to find an end table and happened to go into the back room and saw this giant Buddha and asked the people, "Where did that come from and can I have it?" And the lady said, "Well, we had it brought in especially for a man who's been going back and forth with us, but he finally said he didn't want it and just left. If you want it, I can give you a great price on him." Within 48 hours, she had her giant Buddha. She realized there's something within us that is seeking recognition. There's something that wants to be seen through us. There's something that wants us to see a bigger playground of life, a more sacred sanctuary. And can we open our eyes to see it? True story. If you go to the blank screen for a minute, one final story. Would you give me that song? Sometimes the logs in our eyes are our own boundaries, that we can't see beyond our own boundaries. So there becomes a willingness to just recognize we have them. Sometimes the logs in our eyes become our self-serving goals and desires, and those things that we get so attached to that yet are serving an ego purpose or serving a purpose that's really subservient to this greater, higher purpose. But then there's a whole nother level of logs in our eyes. Sometimes there's a log in your eye because you're literally like this. Have you ever run into a wall and you did not know how you were going to get past it? Those are the times when the Spirit of God, when the Christ Spirit is saying, it is Christ in you. It is this great I am within you that wants to raise you up and be seen as you and through you and in you and by you in a way that you in your mortal self cannot imagine. That was the story of Susie. Susie was a young woman who had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. She had seen several doctors and the prognosis was the same. You've got about 6 months to live. She was in stage 4 cancer, end of her life. She decided that her family situation was not a real good one. She did not want to die there. She didn't want to be a burden to her family, and her family was really not in a place to be able to support her. So she said, I want to die. I want to live my last days in peace. She took a globe, she spun it around, closed her eyes, and put her finger down. Said, God, wherever you lead me, that's where I'm going to die. Her finger landed on Maui. She moved to Maui. She moved into a little apartment, and the next door neighbor was Sylvan. So Susie was weak. She was not doing anything to treat the cancer. And every day she would just go out and go for a little walk. She'd sit outside. And Sylvan noticed Susie as a new person on the island. He would talk to her. He'd sometimes go walk with her. And little by little, Sylvan fell head over heels in love with Susie. He had been praying for this woman, and he thought God sent her to that island especially for him. He was just all over her. So one day they're walking, and Sylvan says, Susie, I know God sent you here. Will you marry me? And she went, no! And turned and ran. And Sylvan said, now, I was not expecting that. So he ran after her and he said, Susie, what did I do? What is wrong? And she said, Sylvan, you can't love me. And he said, why? She said, sweetheart, I'm dying. I've only got a few months to live. I've come here to die, not to find a husband. And he said, what do you mean you're dying? You look fine to me. And so they began to talk about her prognosis, and he said, you're not going to die. We're going to get married. And she said, I can't see how that's possible, but if you can see it, then maybe I can see through you. And so he took her to a holistic doctor over on Oahu, and that doctor started working with her. And that doctor said, more than anything, Susie has to be able to see life. More than anything, she has to be able to see something that wants her to live. And one day Sylvan came home from work and he noticed that there was a little bird outside where the wing was broken, and Susie was over tending that bird, and so they took it and he got a little cage for it, and he noticed that when she took care of that bird, she was wanting to live. So without Susie knowing it, Sylvan started going all over the island and said, do you have a cat, a dog, a pig, anything that is sick? Anything. You got anything, any kind of pet, fur, if it's close to an animal and it needs help, I want it. 33 years later. Did you hear what I'm saying? 33 years later. This is Susie and that Sylvan. Will you give me the next slide? They have the Boo Boo Zoo on Maui. It's called East Maui Animal Refuge. They have hundreds of animals that they call a sanctuary. It's a no-kill sanctuary. People volunteer. We still support them financially. These people are amazing. You see, Susie ran into a wall. Could she of her own self do anything to change it? No. But somebody else came along and said, I love you enough. Will you let me see the way for you? And will you allow this Christ presence to come into you and heal you? Susie's cancer-free. The doctors don't know what in the world happened. They said she should have died over 30 years ago. But she's been living, and they've tended for animals. If you ever walked in their house, I don't know how they live there. There is every kind of animal known and unknown walking around and sleeping right in there with them. And they love it. Logs, splinters, things that poke at us. All of those things are pointing us to the great I am, that I am, that I am. That I, in and of myself, cannot do it. It's the first step of the 12 step. There is this higher presence, this higher power in me that can live through me. And so our prayer becomes this. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you one more time. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. So we're singing, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Take a deep breath and to let it go. You know, nobody taught you how to breathe. Your first breath may have been brought on when a doctor spanked you on your bottom. The minute you came out of that sacred womb of dwelling within and coming out of the birth canal into air, where you have lungs. And the breath is that part of us that connects us with the seen and the unseen. For we do not see our breath, but our breath is what keeps us in our physical body. Our breath is the place where the seen and the unseen are most easily traced back to their source. Our breath is the place where it's easiest for us to return to source. So today we allow our breathing to relax us. And we use our imagination to visualize that where our heart is, it is as if a door that automatically, very gently opens.